Ethan staggered back, clutching the alien crystal tightly as the flood of images continued to overwhelm him. The visions were chaotic, a swirling mix of stars collapsing, planets burning, and armies clashing in space. Among the chaos, he saw glimpses of Earth, surrounded by darkness, with the Guardian standing alone against an endless tide of enemies. It wasn't just a warning, it was a prophecy. Olivia grabbed his arm, steadying him. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice urgent but soft. "What are they trying to tell us?" Ethan shook his head, struggling to make sense of the fragmented scenes still flashing in his mind. "It's an invasion," he managed to say, his voice trembling. "Something is coming, something bigger than those ships. The aliens, they're not our enemies. They're scouts, or maybe refugees. They came to warn us." The insect-like leader clicked again, this time more insistently, pointing at the Guardian and then toward the horizon. Ethan followed its gaze and saw faint streaks of light in the sky. More ships, far larger than the ones currently hovering above the desert. These new arrivals were moving fast, their forms jagged and menacing, like predators descending on prey. "They're here," Olivia whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Whatever they warned us about, it's already arriving." The Guardian let out a deep, resonant roar, its glowing runes flaring brighter than ever. It turned to face the incoming ships, raising both arms in preparation for battle. Ethan felt a surge of determination, not just from himself, but from the bond he shared with the ancient protector. He knew what he had to do. "Give me the tablet," Ethan said quickly, holding out his hand to Olivia. She handed it over without question, her trust in him unwavering despite the impossibility of their situation. Ethan flipped through the symbols again, searching for one that might represent unity or alliance. When he found it, he held up the tablet to the alien leader, pointing first to the symbol, then to the Guardian, and finally to the approaching ships. The alien leader paused, its multifaceted eyes scanning the image carefully. After a moment, it clicked softly, nodding its head slightly. One of its attendants stepped forward, placing another device on the ground, a small glowing orb that projected a holographic map of the solar system. The map zoomed in on Earth, highlighting areas where the enemy ships were likely to strike first. "They're helping us," Olivia said, her voice filled with awe. "They're showing us how to fight back." Ethan nodded, studying the map intently. "We need to work together, all of us, humans, the Guardian, and them." He turned to General Hale, who was watching the exchange with a mixture of skepticism and unease. "General, we don't have time to argue. If we don't unite now, none of us will survive." Hale hesitated, glancing at the Guardian and then at the advancing fleet of ships. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "Fine. But if this goes south, it's on your head." With the general's reluctant approval, Ethan and Olivia worked quickly to coordinate a plan. The soldiers would provide ground support, targeting the smaller enemy vessels while the Guardian focused on the larger threats. Meanwhile, the aliens deployed their drones to intercept incoming projectiles, creating a defensive perimeter around the group. As the first wave of enemy ships entered Earth's atmosphere, the Guardian unleashed a massive burst of energy, tearing through one of the lead vessels. The explosion lit up the sky, sending shockwaves rippling across the desert. The aliens responded immediately, firing beams of light that disabled several smaller ships. Together, they formed a united front, fighting side by side against the overwhelming force. But even with their combined efforts, the odds were stacked against them. More ships kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. Ethan watched as the Guardian took hit after hit, its armor cracking under the strain. Despite its immense power, it couldn't hold out forever. "We need to do something," Olivia urged, her voice breaking with desperation. "If the Guardian falls, we're done for." Ethan clenched his fists, his mind racing. Then an idea struck him, one so risky it might cost him everything. "I think I know how to help," he said, looking at the Guardian. "But I'll need your trust. All of you. Without waiting for a response, Ethan ran toward the towering figure, ready to take the biggest gamble of his life. In the heart of the Arizona desert, where the sun blazed down on endless stretches of sand and rock, a young man named Ethan Carter wiped sweat from his brow. He had been digging for days, following faint traces of something unusual beneath the surface. Most people thought he was chasing shadows, but Ethan had always believed there was more to the world than what met the eye. The desert was quiet except for the occasional rustle of wind blowing through dry shrubs. Ethan adjusted his hat and knelt by a small trench he'd been working on. His hands brushed against something hard and smooth, too perfect to be natural. Carefully, he cleared away more sand, revealing a strange symbol carved into the stone. It wasn't like anything he'd ever seen before. The lines glowed faintly under the sunlight, pulsing with an energy that made his skin tingle. Ethan's heart raced. This was it, the discovery he'd been dreaming of. He called out to his colleague, Olivia Hayes, who was examining another part of the site a few yards away. She was an astrophysicist, not an archaeologist, but her expertise in ancient technologies had brought her here. When she arrived, her sharp eyes widened as she studied the glowing symbol. "What do you think it means?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling with excitement. Olivia frowned, running her fingers over the markings. "I don't know yet, but this isn't just some old artifact. These patterns, they're almost like circuitry." As they debated its origins, the ground beneath them began to hum softly. At first, it was so subtle that Ethan thought it might be his imagination. But then the vibration grew stronger, shaking loose grains of sand around their feet. They exchanged nervous glances and stepped back. Suddenly, the earth cracked open, splitting apart to reveal a dark chasm below. Peering inside, they saw steps carved into the rock, descending deep underground. The air smelled musty, as if no one, or nothing, had disturbed this place in centuries. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before grabbing his flashlight. "We have to check it out," he said firmly. Olivia nodded, though her face betrayed her unease. Together, they descended into the darkness. The narrow staircase led them to a massive chamber filled with towering pillars covered in intricate carvings. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, glowing faintly with the same light as the symbol above. On the walls, vivid images depicted a colossal figure battling strange creatures that looked otherworldly. The figure appeared humanoid but far larger than any human, encased in shimmering armor that seemed alive with energy. This is incredible," Olivia whispered, her voice echoing in the vast space. "It looks like some kind of guardian, a protector." Ethan approached the pedestal cautiously. As he reached out to touch it, the entire chamber lit up, bathing them in a brilliant blue light. A low rumble filled the air, growing louder until it felt like the ground itself might split apart again. From somewhere deeper within the structure came a sound, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through their chests. "Do you think we should leave?" Olivia asked nervously, gripping her flashlight tightly. Before Ethan could answer, the floor beneath the pedestal shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a crystalline object pulsating with energy. Without thinking, Ethan picked it up. Instantly, the carvings on the walls flared brighter, and the hum transformed into a deafening roar. "We need to get out of here," Olivia shouted, already backing toward the stairs. But Ethan couldn't move. He stared at the crystal in his hand, feeling a strange connection to it, as if it were calling to him. Before either of them could react further, the chamber shook violently, knocking them off their feet. Dust rained down from above, and the glow from the walls intensified until it became almost unbearable. When the tremors finally subsided, Ethan realized something monumental had awakened. Whatever this place was guarding, it was no longer dormant, and neither were the forces tied to it. Ethan and Olivia scrambled to their feet, coughing as dust filled the air. The chamber was eerily quiet now, but the glowing carvings on the walls remained bright, casting long shadows across the room. Ethan still held the pulsating crystal in his hand, its rhythm matching the beat of his heart. He felt a strange pull toward it, as though it were alive and aware of his presence. "What did you do?" Olivia asked, her voice sharp with both fear and frustration. She grabbed his arm, trying to snap him out of whatever trance he seemed to be in. "I didn't mean to," Ethan stammered, finally looking up at her. "It just reacted when I touched it." Olivia sighed, shaking her head. "We need to figure this out before things get worse. If that thing woke something up, whatever it is, we're in serious trouble." They turned their attention back to the carvings on the walls. The images told a story. A towering guardian standing between Earth and an army of strange alien creatures. The guardian fought fiercely, wielding weapons made of light and energy. In one section, the carving showed humans bowing before the giant figure, offering gratitude. But in another, the guardian stood alone, abandoned, as time passed and civilizations crumbled around it. "This isn't just art," Olivia murmured, tracing her fingers over the engravings. "It's a record. This guardian was created, or maybe built, to protect us. But look here." She pointed to a faded image near the bottom. "Something happened. It stopped being active. Maybe it went dormant because we forgot about it." Ethan frowned. "Or maybe it got shut down on purpose." Before they could discuss it further, the ground trembled again, more violently this time. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, followed by a mechanical whirring sound. Both of them froze, staring at the pedestal where the crystal had been resting moments ago. Now the entire structure was glowing brighter, and parts of the floor began shifting aside to reveal a hidden passage below. "Do we really want to go down there?" Ethan asked nervously. "We don't have much choice," Olivia replied, grabbing a flashlight from her bag. "Whatever's happening, we're already involved. We might as well see it through." With hesitant steps, they descended into the newly revealed corridor. It was narrow and damp, lined with metallic panels that hummed faintly under their touch. The air grew colder the deeper they went, and the walls shimmered faintly, as if responding to their presence. After what felt like an eternity, they reached another large chamber and gasped at what they saw. In the center of the room lay a massive form, curled up like a sleeping beast. It was humanoid but far larger than any human, easily 3 stories tall. Its body was covered in intricate armor that gleamed even in the dim light, and glowing runes shifted across its surface like flowing water. Its face was obscured by a helmet-like structure, but its closed eyes glowed faintly, as though dreaming. "It's real," Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. "The Guardian. It's real." As they stood there, awestruck, the crystal in Ethan's hand pulsed violently, sending a surge of energy through the room. The giant stirred, its massive frame shuddering slightly. Slowly, painfully slowly, it began to rise. Its glowing eyes opened, scanning the room with an unreadable expression. Ethan instinctively stepped forward, raising the crystal. "Wait," he shouted, though he wasn't sure why. "We're not your enemies." The Guardian tilted its head, studying him silently. For a moment, it seemed calm, but then its gaze shifted to Olivia, who was clutching her flashlight tightly. Without warning, it raised one enormous hand, palm facing outward. A wave of energy shot toward them, forcing them to dive out of the way as the wall behind them exploded into rubble. "We need to leave. Now," Olivia yelled, scrambling to her feet. But Ethan hesitated, staring at the towering figure. Despite its size and power, it didn't seem hostile. At least, not intentionally. It looked confused, disoriented, like someone waking up after centuries of sleep. As the Guardians scanned the room again, Ethan realized they had stumbled onto something far bigger than either of them could comprehend. Ethan stayed rooted to the spot, his mind racing as the Guardian towered above him. The air crackled with energy, and every movement of its massive limbs sent tremors through the chamber. Olivia tugged at his arm, urging him to run, but he couldn't bring himself to move. Something about the way the Guardian looked at him, its glowing eyes scanning, searching, made him feel like it was trying to understand rather than attack. "Ethan, we don't have time for this," Olivia hissed, her voice shaking. "That thing just blew a hole in the wall. What if it decides to do worse?" But Ethan shook his head. "It's not attacking us on purpose. Look at it. It's confused. It doesn't know what's going on." The Guardian let out a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the room. Its head tilted slightly, almost as if it were curious. Slowly, it lowered its hand, which had been raised defensively, or perhaps threateningly, moments before. Instead of another blast of energy, it took a cautious step forward, its movements deliberate but clumsy, like someone learning to walk again after a long illness. Olivia hesitated, watching the scene unfold. "Okay, maybe you're right," she admitted reluctantly. "But how do we talk to it? We can't exactly ask it questions." Ethan glanced down at the crystal still clutched in his hand. It pulsed faintly, in sync with the runes glowing across the Guardian's armor. He didn't fully understand why, but he felt certain the crystal was the key. Taking a deep breath, he stepped closer to the giant figure, raising the crystal high so it could see. I think this belongs to you," Ethan said slowly, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. "We didn't mean to wake you up. We were just exploring." For a moment, nothing happened. The Guardian stood motionless, its glowing eyes fixed on the crystal. Then, with surprising gentleness, it reached out one enormous hand and wrapped its fingers around the tiny object. As soon as the crystal touched its palm, the runes on its armor flared brightly, bathing the entire chamber in light. A wave of warmth washed over Ethan and Olivia, and they both stumbled back, shielding their eyes. When the light faded, the Guardian seemed different. Its posture straightened, and its movements became smoother, more controlled. It turned its head toward Ethan, studying him intently. Then, without warning, it knelt down, lowering itself to their level. One massive hand extended toward him, palm open in what could only be interpreted as an invitation, or maybe a test. "What does it want?" Olivia whispered, clutching Ethan's sleeve tightly. "I think it wants me to trust it," Ethan replied, his voice barely audible. He swallowed hard and took a hesitant step forward. When the Guardian didn't react aggressively, he placed his hand on its massive palm. The moment their skin made contact, a surge of images flooded his mind. Stars, planets, battles, and faces he didn't recognize. It was overwhelming, but not painful. "He's showing me something," Ethan gasped, pulling his hand away. "It's memories, or history. I don't know." Olivia stared at him, wide-eyed. "You're connecting with it. Somehow, you're speaking its language." Before they could process what was happening, the ground shook violently once more. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the walls groaned as though the entire structure might collapse. The Guardian rose to its full height, turning its gaze upward. It let out a low, rumbling growl that echoed through the chamber, then stepped toward the exit, its heavy footsteps causing the floor to quake. "Where's it going?" Olivia asked, scrambling to follow as Ethan hurried after the towering figure. "It's leaving," Ethan said, his voice filled with awe. "And I think we need to go with it." As they emerged from the underground chamber into the bright desert sunlight, they saw the Guardian pause, scanning the horizon. Whatever it sensed, or whatever it remembered, it was clear that its awakening had set something much larger into motion, and whether they liked it or not, Ethan and Olivia were now part of its story. The desert sun blazed overhead as Ethan and Olivia followed the towering Guardian, their footsteps kicking up clouds of sand. The massive figure moved with surprising speed for something so large, its armored body gleaming in the sunlight. Every step it took left deep imprints in the ground, marking its path like a trail of breadcrumbs. Despite its size, it seemed careful not to cause unnecessary destruction, avoiding rocks and patches of vegetation as it strode forward. Ethan glanced back at Olivia, who was struggling to keep up. Her face was red from the heat, and her breathing came in short gasps. "We can't just keep running after it," she said between breaths. "What's the plan here? Are we supposed to guide it or something?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. But I think it wants us to follow. It stopped earlier when it realized we weren't keeping up. Olivia frowned but didn't argue. She knew Ethan had a point. Ever since he touched the crystal and made contact with the Guardian, there had been an unspoken bond between them. Whether it was trust, curiosity, or something else entirely, the Guardian seemed to view Ethan as important, perhaps even essential. As they walked, the horizon ahead began to change. In the distance, a convoy of military vehicles appeared, kicking up dust as they sped toward the group. Ethan's stomach sank. He recognized the insignia on the lead vehicle. General Marcus Hale's unit. News of the Guardian's awakening must have reached the authorities, and now they were coming to investigate, or worse, intervene. Trouble's coming, Olivia muttered, shielding her eyes to get a better look at the approaching vehicles. They'll see that thing as a threat. We have to warn it. Before Ethan could respond, the Guardian turned its head, locking onto the convoy with glowing eyes. It let out a low hum, the sound reverberating through the air. Its massive frame tensed, and the rooms on its armor flared brighter, casting sharp shadows across the sand. "No, wait," Ethan shouted, rushing forward to stand between the Guardian and the incoming soldiers. He held up his hands, hoping to convey calm. "It's okay. They're humans, not enemies." But the Guardian didn't relax. Instead, it stepped closer to Ethan, positioning itself protectively behind him. When the convoy screeched to a halt a safe distance away, armed soldiers poured out, their weapons trained on the towering figure. General Hale stepped forward, his voice booming through a megaphone. "Step away from the entity," he commanded. "This is a restricted area. You are under military jurisdiction." Ethan raised his hands higher, trying to show he meant no harm. "General, please listen. This isn't an enemy. It's a Guardian. It protects Earth." Hale's expression hardened. "That thing is a danger, and we're here to neutralize it. Stand aside, or you'll be detained along with it." Olivia grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him back slightly. "This isn't going to end well," she whispered urgently. "They won't listen. They'll shoot first and ask questions later." Ethan hesitated, torn between fear and determination. He looked up at the Guardian, whose glowing eyes flickered with what almost seemed like concern. It wasn't acting aggressively. It was reacting defensively. If the soldiers fired, the situation would spiral out of control. "Please," Ethan pleaded, turning back to the general. "Give us a chance to explain. It's not attacking anyone. It's confused, just like we are." Hale ignored him, raising his hand to signal his troops. "Fire warning shots. Let's see how it reacts." The crack of gunfire echoed across the desert as bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the Guardian's armor. At first, it didn't move, standing tall and unmoving like a statue. But then, one soldier aimed higher, striking one of the glowing runes on its chest. The Guardian roared, a deafening sound that shook the ground, and raised its hand. A burst of energy shot outward, sending a wave of force that knocked the soldiers off their feet and flipped several vehicles onto their sides. Panic erupted among the troops, but Ethan shouted over the chaos, "Stop shooting. You're making it worse." The Guardian lowered its hand, watching the scattered soldiers with an unreadable expression. For a moment, everything was still. Then, without warning, it knelt down again, bringing its massive face close to Ethan's level. Its glowing eyes locked onto his, and it let out a soft hum, almost like a question. Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't know what to do," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. But one thing was clear. If they didn't find a way to communicate with the Guardian, and fast, the situation would only escalate further. Ethan stood frozen, staring into the glowing eyes of the Guardian. Its massive form loomed over him, yet there was no trace of aggression in its stance. Instead, it seemed to be waiting, watching for some kind of response. The soldiers were regrouping behind them, shouting orders and reloading their weapons, but Ethan barely heard them. His mind raced as he tried to think of a way to bridge the gap between humanity and this ancient protector. Olivia stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "We need to show it we're not a threat," she said firmly. "If it reacts to hostility with force, then maybe kindness will work too." "But how?" Ethan asked, glancing at the crystal still clutched in his hand. "I don't even know what language it speaks, or if it understands anything at all." Olivia hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small device, a tablet she'd been using earlier to analyze the carvings in the underground chamber. She tapped the screen rapidly, bringing up images of the symbols they'd seen on the walls. "Maybe this can help. If we show it these patterns, it might recognize them." Ethan nodded slowly. It was worth a try. He held up the tablet, showing the glowing runes to the Guardian. At first, nothing happened, but then one of the runes on its armor pulsed brighter, matching the pattern on the screen. The Guardian tilted its head, studying the image closely. "It's working," Olivia whispered, excitement creeping into her voice. "It recognizes the symbols." Encouraged, Ethan pointed to the ground where the soldiers had fired their warning shots. Then he mimed lowering a weapon, hoping the gesture would convey peace. The Guardian watched intently, its glowing eyes flickering as if processing his actions. After a long moment, it raised one massive hand and extended it toward the soldiers, palm open in a clear sign of non-aggression. The soldiers didn't move, unsure of what to do next. General Hale barked commands from behind cover, urging his men to stay alert, but none of them dared fire again after seeing the destruction caused by the Guardian's energy blast. Ethan seized the opportunity to step closer to the general, holding the tablet high so he could see the symbols. "General, please," Ethan pleaded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "This thing isn't our enemy. Look at the carvings. It's here to protect us. We just need time to figure out how to talk to it." Hale frowned, clearly torn between caution and curiosity. Finally, he lowered his weapon slightly. "You have 10 minutes, he growled. "After that, I'm taking it down." Ethan nodded quickly, turning back to the Guardian. With Olivia's help, he began experimenting with different gestures and sounds, trying to establish a connection. Each time they showed it a new symbol or made a calming motion, the Guardian responded subtly, tilting its head, humming softly, or pulsing its runes in acknowledgement. As the minutes ticked by, Ethan noticed something remarkable. The Guardian seemed to be learning. It started copying their movements, mirroring Ethan's gestures almost exactly. When Ethan placed a hand over his heart, the Guardian pressed two massive fingers against its chest plate, mimicking the action. It was clumsy but unmistakable, an attempt to communicate. "We're getting somewhere," Olivia said, her voice filled with awe. "It's intelligent, smarter than we thought." But before they could celebrate, the ground beneath them trembled violently. A distant rumble echoed across the desert, growing louder with each passing second. Ethan turned toward the horizon, squinting against the sunlight. His blood ran cold as he saw dark shapes descending from the sky, ships unlike anything he'd ever seen before. "They're not ours," Olivia murmured, gripping Ethan's arm tightly. "Alien ships." The Guardian straightened instantly, its glowing eyes locking onto the approaching vessels. It let out a deep, resonant hum, and the runes on its armor flared brighter than ever. For the first time since awakening, it looked fully alert and ready for battle. Whatever was coming, the Guardian knew it wasn't friendly. And now, Earth was caught in the middle of something far bigger than anyone had imagined. The alien ships descended rapidly, their sleek forms cutting through the sky like knives. They were unlike anything Ethan or Olivia had ever seen. Smooth, metallic surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly glow, and strange symbols etched along their hulls that pulsed faintly with light. The air crackled with energy as the ship slowed to a hover above the desert, casting long shadows over the sand. Ethan's heart pounded as he turned to the Guardian. Its massive frame was tense, every rune on its armor blazing with intensity. It stood tall between the humans, and the alien vessels, shielding them without hesitation. For a moment, Ethan felt a surge of gratitude, but it was quickly replaced by fear. What if the Guardian couldn't stop whatever was coming? One of the ships lowered closer to the ground, and a beam of light shot down, forming a platform. A figure stepped onto the sand, a tall, insect-like creature with multiple limbs and a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed in the sunlight. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting the scene before it like a kaleidoscope. Behind it, more figures emerged from the other ships, each armed with weapons that hummed ominously. "Who, or what, are they?" Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. She clutched Ethan's arm tightly, her knuckles white. "I don't know," Ethan replied, his gaze fixed on the newcomers. "But I don't think they're here for a friendly chat." The insect-like leader raised one clawed limb, pointing directly at the Guardian. A series of sharp, clicking sounds erupted from its mouth, too fast and alien to understand. The Guardian responded with a deep, resonant hum, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly. The two seemed to be communicating, or at least attempting to, but there was no mistaking the tension in the air. Suddenly, the alien leader turned its attention to the scattered soldiers behind Ethan and Olivia. It clicked again, this time louder and more insistent. General Hale shouted orders, and his troops scrambled to take defensive positions, aiming their weapons at the invaders. But before anyone could fire, the Guardian stepped forward, blocking their line of sight. "They're not your fight," Ethan muttered under his breath, watching the Guardian closely. He wasn't sure how he knew, but he could feel it. The Guardian was trying to protect everyone, human and alien alike, from something worse. The standoff stretched on, the silence broken only by the soft hum of the alien ships and the occasional click from their leader. Then, without warning, the alien raised its arm again, this time pointing at Ethan. The gesture was unmistakable. They wanted him. "What do they want with me?" Ethan asked, panic rising in his chest. Olivia shook her head, her face pale. "Maybe it's because you connected with the Guardian. They see you as part of it now." Before Ethan could respond, the Guardian moved suddenly, positioning itself squarely between him and the aliens. It let out a low growl, the sound reverberating across the desert. The runes on its armor flared brighter, and a shimmering barrier of energy formed around it, and by extension, around Ethan and Olivia. The alien leader clicked angrily, gesturing toward the Guardian with both arms. In response, several smaller drones detached from the ships, hovering menacingly closer. Ethan realized with a sinking feeling that the aliens weren't going to back down. "We need to find a way to communicate," Olivia said urgently. "If we don't, this is going to turn into a war." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He looked at the tablet in his hand, still displaying the ancient symbols they'd been using to connect with the Guardian. "Maybe these symbols mean something to them too," he suggested. "They look similar to the ones on their ships." Without waiting for a reply, Ethan held up the tablet, showing the symbols to the alien leader. At first, there was no reaction. But then, one of the drones floated closer, scanning the device with a bright red light. The alien leader tilted its head, studying the screen intently. "It's working," Olivia breathed, her voice filled with cautious hope. "Keep going." Encouraged, Ethan flipped through the images on the tablet, searching for patterns that matched those on the alien ships. When he found one, he pointed to it emphatically, hoping the message would get through. The alien leader clicked again, this time slower and less hostile. One of its attendants stepped forward, holding out a small object, a crystal similar to the one Ethan had used to awaken the Guardian. Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to trust them. But the Guardian hummed softly, its glowing eyes steady and reassuring. Taking a deep breath, Ethan reached out and accepted the crystal. As soon as his fingers touched it, a flood of images rushed into his mind. Stars, planets, battles, and a sense of urgency he couldn't fully comprehend. "They're warning us," Ethan said, turning to Olivia. "Something big is coming. something even the Guardian might not be able to stop alone. The alien ships descended rapidly, their sleek forms cutting through the sky like knives. They were unlike anything Ethan or Olivia had ever seen. Smooth, metallic surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly glow, and strange symbols etched along their hulls that pulsed faintly with light. The air crackled with energy as the ship slowed to a hover above the desert, casting long shadows over the sand. Ethan's heart pounded as he turned to the Guardian. Its massive frame was tense, every rune on its armor blazing with intensity. It stood tall between the humans and the alien vessels, shielding them without hesitation. For a moment, Ethan felt a surge of gratitude, but it was quickly replaced by fear. What if the Guardian couldn't stop whatever was coming? One of the ships lowered closer to the ground, and a beam of light shot down, forming a platform. A figure stepped onto the sand, a tall, insect-like creature with multiple limbs and a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed in the sunlight. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting the scene before it like a kaleidoscope. Behind it, more figures emerged from the other ships, each armed with weapons that hummed ominously. "Who, or what, are they?" Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. She clutched Ethan's arm tightly, her knuckles white. "I don't know," Ethan replied, his gaze fixed on the newcomers. "But I don't think they're here for a friendly chat." The insect-like leader raised one clawed limb, pointing directly at the Guardian. A series of sharp, clicking sounds erupted from its mouth, too fast and alien to understand. The Guardian responded with a deep, resonant hum, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly. The two seemed to be communicating, or at least attempting to, but there was no mistaking the tension in the air. Suddenly, the alien leader turned its attention to the scattered soldiers behind Ethan and Olivia. It clicked again, this time louder and more insistent. General Hale shouted orders, and his troops scrambled to take defensive positions, aiming their weapons at the invaders. But before anyone could fire, the Guardian stepped forward, blocking their line of sight. "They're not your fight," Ethan muttered under his breath, watching the Guardian closely. He wasn't sure how he knew, but he could feel it. The Guardian was trying to protect everyone, human and alien alike, from something worse. The standoff stretched on, the silence broken only by the soft hum of the alien ships and the occasional click from their leader. Then, without warning, the alien raised its arm again, this time pointing at Ethan. The gesture was unmistakable. They wanted him. "What do they want with me?" Ethan asked, panic rising in his chest. Olivia shook her head, her face pale. "Maybe it's because you connected with the Guardian. They see you as part of it now." Before Ethan could respond, the Guardian moved suddenly, positioning itself squarely between him and the aliens. It let out a low growl, the sound reverberating across the desert. The runes on its armor flared brighter, and a shimmering barrier of energy formed around it. And by extension, around Ethan and Olivia. The alien leader clicked angrily, gesturing toward the Guardian with both arms. In response, several smaller drones detached from the ships, hovering menacingly closer. Ethan realized with a sinking feeling that the aliens weren't going to back down. "We need to find a way to communicate," Olivia said urgently. "If we don't, this is going to turn into a war." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He looked at the tablet in his hand, still displaying the ancient symbols they'd been using to connect with the Guardian. "Maybe these symbols mean something to them too," he suggested. "They look similar to the ones on their ships." Without waiting for a reply, Ethan held up the tablet, showing the symbols to the alien leader. At first, there was no reaction. But then, one of the drones floated closer, scanning the device with a bright red light. The alien leader tilted its head, studying the screen intently. "It's working," Olivia breathed, her voice filled with cautious hope. "Keep going." Encouraged, Ethan flipped through the images on the tablet, searching for patterns that matched those on the alien ships. When he found one, he pointed to it emphatically, hoping the message would get through. The alien leader clicked again, this time slower and less hostile. One of its attendants stepped forward, holding out a small object, a crystal similar to the one Ethan had used to awaken the Guardian. Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to trust them. But the Guardian hummed softly, its glowing eyes steady and reassuring. Taking a deep breath, Ethan reached out and accepted the crystal. As soon as his fingers touched it, a flood of images rushed into his mind. Stars, planets, battles, and a sense of urgency he couldn't fully comprehend. "They're warning us," Ethan said, turning to Olivia. "Something big is coming. Something even the Guardian might not be able to stop alone." Ethan sprinted toward the Guardian, his heart pounding in his chest. The massive figure was battered, its once gleaming armor now scared and cracked from the relentless assault. Energy blasts rained down from the sky, shaking the ground with each impact. Ethan knew time was running out. If he didn't act quickly, the Guardian would fall, and with it, any hope of stopping the invaders. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Olivia shouted from behind him, her voice filled with panic. She started to follow, but General Hale grabbed her arm, holding her back. "He's made his choice," Hale said grimly. "Let's just hope it works." Ignoring the chaos around him, Ethan reached the Guardian's side and looked up at its towering form. Its glowing eyes flickered weakly, as if struggling to stay alert. He raised the alien crystal high, hoping it would respond. To his relief, the runes on the Guardian's armor pulsed faintly, recognizing the object in his hand. "I need to connect with you," Ethan said loudly, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "We can't win this alone. Let me help." The Guardian tilted its head, studying him intently. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, it knelt down, lowering itself closer to Ethan's level. One massive hand extended toward him, palm open in invitation, or perhaps trust. Ethan didn't hesitate. He stepped onto the Guardian's palm and allowed it to lift him up until he was eye level with its glowing faceplate. Olivia watched in stunned silence as Ethan pressed the alien crystal against the Guardian's chestplate, right over one of the largest runes. A surge of energy erupted between them, enveloping Ethan in a blinding light. The connection was instantaneous and overwhelming. Memories, emotions, and knowledge flooded his mind, merging with his own thoughts. He felt the weight of eons, the countless battles fought and sacrifices made for Earth's protection. Through the bond, Ethan understood what needed to be done. The Guardian wasn't just a machine. It was powered by the collective will of those who believed in its purpose. And now it needed Ethan's strength to fight back. "I'm here," Ethan whispered, closing his eyes as he focused all his energy into the link. "We're not giving up." The Guardian roared, its voice echoing across the battlefield. The cracks in its armor began to seal, glowing brighter with renewed power. Its movements became faster, more precise, as it unleashed devastating blasts of energy that tore through the enemy ships. One by one, the jagged vessels exploded in fiery bursts, lighting up the night sky. But the victory came at a cost. Ethan could feel himself weakening, his body trembling under the strain of maintaining the connection. Each pulse of energy drained him further, leaving him dizzy and gasping for air. Still, he refused to let go. If he faltered now, everything would be lost. Olivia noticed Ethan's condition and broke free from Hale's grip, running toward the Guardian. "You have to stop," she yelled, tears streaming down her face. "You're killing yourself." Ethan shook his head weakly, his vision blurring. "It's okay," he managed to say, his voice barely audible. "This is what I'm meant to do." The Guardian seemed to understand the sacrifice Ethan was making. It let out a low hum, almost like a mournful cry, before focusing all its remaining energy on the final wave of enemy ships. With a single, earth-shattering blast, it obliterated the last of the invaders, sending debris raining down from the sky. As the dust settled, the Guardian lowered Ethan gently to the ground. His legs gave out beneath him, and he collapsed into Olivia's arms. She cradled him tightly, sobbing uncontrollably, while the Guardian stood silently above them, its glowing eyes dimming slightly. The battle was over for now. But as Ethan drifted in and out of consciousness, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever force had sent those ships wasn't gone. It was still out there, watching and waiting. The desert was eerily quiet after the battle, the only sounds being the soft rustle of wind and the faint hum of the Guardian's armor as it stood watch over Ethan and Olivia. Ethan lay in Olivia's arms, his breathing shallow but steady. His connection with the Guardian had saved them all, but at a great cost. His body felt heavy, drained of every ounce of energy, and his thoughts were clouded, as though part of him still lingered within the ancient protector. Olivia pressed her hand against his forehead, checking for fever. "Stay with me, Ethan," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "You did it. You saved us. But you need to rest now." Ethan managed a weak smile, though his eyelids fluttered as if they might close at any moment. "It's not over," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "They'll come again. This was just the start." Before Olivia could respond, the Guardian knelt beside them, its massive frame casting a shadow over the pair. Its glowing eyes dimmed further, almost sympathetically, before it extended one enormous hand toward Ethan. The gesture was unmistakable. It wanted to help. "He's asking for permission," Olivia realized, looking up at the towering figure. "Do you trust it?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I already do." With careful precision, the Guardian placed 2 fingers lightly on Ethan's chest. A warm glow spread from its touch, enveloping him in soothing energy. Ethan's breathing steadied, and some color returned to his pale face. Though he didn't fully recover, the exhaustion that had weighed him down began to lift. "They healed you," Olivia said, relief washing over her features. "But why?" Ethan sat up slowly, leaning on Olivia for support. He glanced at the Guardian, whose runes still pulsed faintly. "It's not just healing me," he said quietly. "It's thanking me for trusting it, for staying connected when no one else would." As Ethan regained his strength, the alien leader approached cautiously, its insect-like limbs clicking softly against the sand. It carried the small orb, the holographic map, and placed it on the ground before them. When activated, the map displayed distant stars and planets, highlighting several regions marked with ominous red symbols. "They're showing us where the real threat is coming from," Ethan explained, studying the projections. "This wasn't an invasion, it was a test. Whoever controls those ships wanted to see how we'd respond." General Hale stepped forward, his expression grim but thoughtful. "If this is true, then we've got bigger problems than we thought. We can't face something like that alone." Olivia looked at the Guardian, then at the aliens, and finally at Ethan. "We won't have to," she said firmly. "Look at what we did today. We worked together. Humans, the Guardian, and even them." She gestured toward the insect-like beings. "If we keep doing that, maybe we stand a chance." Ethan nodded, feeling a spark of hope despite the enormity of the challenge ahead. "The Guardian wasn't built to fight alone," he said. "It was meant to inspire, to bring people together. That's why it chose me. Not because I'm special, but because I trusted it enough to try." The Guardian let out a deep hum, its glowing eyes brightening slightly. It turned its gaze skyward, as if reminding everyone of the stakes. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, countless stars twinkled innocently, hiding dangers neither humanity nor their newfound allies could yet comprehend. "We need to prepare," Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger. "Not just militarily, but mentally. This isn't about weapons or shields. It's about unity. If we can hold on to that, we'll be ready for whatever comes next." The alien leader clicked softly, nodding its head in agreement. One of its attendants handed Ethan another crystal, smaller than the first, but pulsing with a familiar energy. Ethan accepted it, knowing instinctively that it was a gift, a token of alliance. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold, Ethan stood alongside Olivia, the Guardian, and the aliens. Together, they formed an unlikely coalition, united by shared purpose and mutual respect. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time, Ethan felt confident they weren't facing it alone. And somewhere deep within him, he knew the Guardian felt the same way. Weeks passed since the battle in the desert, and Earth began to change in ways no one could have predicted. News of the Guardian's awakening and humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial beings spread across the globe like wildfire. Governments that had once been divided now came together, forming an unprecedented alliance to prepare for the threats looming beyond the stars. The world watched as scientists, engineers, and diplomats worked side by side, guided by Ethan, Olivia, and the knowledge shared by both the Guardian and their insect-like allies. Ethan stood on a hill overlooking the newly constructed facility where researchers were studying the Guardian's technology. It was a sprawling complex filled with labs, communication hubs, and training grounds designed to unite humanity under one goal: survival. The Guardian itself remained nearby, standing tall like a silent sentinel, its glowing runes flickering softly as if alive with purpose. Ethan often found himself gazing at it, still marveling at how much they had accomplished together. "It's strange, isn't it?" Olivia said, joining him on the hill. She held a tablet in her hands, displaying updates from teams around the world. "A few months ago, we were just two people digging in the desert. Now, look at all this." Ethan smiled faintly. "We didn't do it alone," he reminded her. "The Guardian chose us, but everyone else chose to follow. That's what makes this work." Olivia nodded, though her expression grew somber. "Do you think we're ready for whatever's coming, I mean?" Ethan hesitated before answering. He glanced at the Guardian again, its massive form casting a long shadow over the landscape. "No one's ever truly ready for something like this," he admitted. "But we've got each other. And them." He gestured toward the aliens, who were working alongside human engineers in the distance. Their clicking voices mingled with the hum of machinery, creating a symphony of cooperation. As night fell, Ethan climbed to the top of the Guardian's pedestal, a platform built specifically so humans could communicate more easily with the ancient protector. Its glowing eyes turned downward, meeting his gaze. Though it didn't speak, Ethan felt its presence like a comforting weight, steady and unwavering. "We'll need your help again soon," Ethan said quietly. "And not just in battles. We need you to keep reminding us why we're doing this. To protect, not destroy." The Guardian let out a deep hum, almost like agreement. Then, slowly, it raised one hand skyward, pointing toward the stars. Ethan followed its gesture, staring at the vast expanse above. Somewhere out there, unseen forces were gathering, waiting for their moment to strike. But tonight, Earth wasn't afraid. Tonight, it was united. Back at the facility, celebrations broke out among the workers. People cheered and hugged one another, celebrating milestones achieved through teamwork and determination. General Hale even shook hands with the alien leader, a gesture broadcast live to millions around the world. Humanity's entry into the galactic stage had begun, not with fear or violence, but with hope and collaboration. As Ethan descended from the pedestal, Olivia met him halfway. "History will remember this day," she said softly, smiling up at him. "You gave Earth a second chance." Ethan shook his head. "Not me," he replied. "All of us. Together." And as they walked back toward the facility, hand in hand, the Guardian stood tall behind them, a symbol of resilience, strength, and unity. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Earth was no longer alone. With the Guardian watching over them, and humanity standing united, the galaxy would soon learn that Earth was not a planet to be underestimated. For the first time in centuries, the forgotten Guardian had awakened, and this time it wouldn't stand alone.